You ever notice how silence makes people uncomfortable? Someone gets loud, defensive, tries to bait you, and you just sit there calm, unshaken. They start fidgeting, talking faster, trying to fill the silence, because silence exposes truth. Silence shows control. It says, you can yell, you can spin, you can project, but I'm not stepping into your storm. That's the power of emotional detachment. When you stop feeding chaos with reaction, you stop giving it power. And that's when real peace begins. You know, most people think silence means you don't have anything to say. They assume if you're not responding, it's because you're weak, unsure, or trying to avoid confrontation. But silence, real intentional silence, isn't avoidance. It's emotional self-discipline. It's understanding that not every opinion needs your defense, not every insult deserves your energy, and not every moment requires a reaction. See, when someone tries to provoke you, they're not always looking for truth. They're looking for control. They want to see if they can pull you into their storm. Because when you react, you give them power. You give them permission to lead the conversation, the emotion, and the tone. But when you stay quiet, when you stay still, you're telling them, you don't control my peace. And that's silence. That's power. There's a difference between being quiet out of fear and being silent out of strength. One hides, the other leads. Silence that comes from strength says, I know my truth. I don't need to convince you of it. It's when you've reached a point where you value peace over proving. You no longer need to explain who you are to people committed to misunderstanding you. That's emotional growth. Think about it like this. Every time you react to someone's negativity, you're feeding it, you're giving it oxygen. And that fire, no matter how small, grows stronger because of your attention. But silence starves it. It's the refusal to participate in drama disguised as conversation. It's walking away with your dignity intact and your energy protected. The hardest part about mastering silence is resisting the urge to defend yourself. Because our natural instinct is to explain, to prove, to justify. But the truth doesn't need a debate. It doesn't need a speech. It stands on its own. And sometimes your silence says everything they need to hear, that you've outgrown the argument, that you've outgrown the need to win every battle. Let me tell you something important. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. In fact, silence is often where the most powerful shifts occur. Because while everyone else is busy reacting, you're observing. You're reading the situation, understanding the tone, and choosing your response, not out of emotion, but out of intention. You're not just reacting to what was said, you're understanding why it was said. And that's emotional intelligence at work. There's this quiet confidence that comes when you realize you don't have to chase being understood. People will interpret you based on their own lens, their own insecurities, and their own emotional limits. You can't control that, but you can control what you give them access to. Silence becomes your filter. It separates what deserves your peace from what drains it. And it's not about bottling things up. It's about directing your energy with precision. It's knowing that your emotions are powerful, but they're not public property. You don't have to express everything you feel to validate that you feel it. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is a calm face in a chaotic room. That kind of composure, it commands respect without demanding it. You'll notice too that silence makes people reveal themselves. When you stop reacting, when you stop feeding the noise, you start seeing who's genuinely communicating and who's just trying to control the room. People who rely on manipulation, guilt, or intimidation can't stand silence. It exposes them. They need your reaction to validate their chaos. And when you don't give it, they lose their balance. That's when the power shifts, not because you spoke louder, but because you stood quieter. Now, don't get me wrong, silence isn't passive. It's not sitting back and doing nothing. It's strategic. It's choosing your timing, your tone, your truth. It's taking the time to respond rather than react. And in that pause, you create space. Space for peace, space for clarity, and space for strength to grow. Every moment you choose silence over reaction, you're strengthening your emotional muscle. You're training yourself to respond from a place of wisdom instead of impulse. And that's what separates people who live in chaos from those who lead with calm. So the next time someone tries to pull you into an argument, remember this: not everything that demands your attention deserves your energy. Your silence is not weakness. It's self-respect. And when you learn to control what you feed, You stop giving power to anything that doesn't feed you back. Emotional detachment gets a bad reputation. People hear that phrase and instantly think it means being cold, distant, or uncaring. But that's not what it is. Detachment isn't about shutting down your emotions. It's about understanding them so deeply that they no longer control you. It's the space between what happens and how you choose to respond. It's clarity in motion. When you start to detach emotionally, you're not saying, I don't care. You're saying, I care, but I won't carry. There's a difference. Because when you carry everything, every rude comment, every unfair opinion, every ounce of someone else's frustration, you lose yourself in their chaos. And that's not peace. That's emotional exhaustion. Detachment allows you to draw the line between your feelings and theirs. It's realizing that's your storm, not mine. Here's the truth. You can't control other people's behavior, but you can control how deeply it touches you. You can listen to someone without absorbing their tone. You can witness disrespect without internalizing it. That's the skill, standing in the middle of noise, but refusing to let it dictate your emotional state. Because when you carry other people's emotions, you become a mirror of their dysfunction. When you detach, you become a reflection of your own discipline. Sometimes emotional detachment looks like not replying right away. Sometimes it looks like walking away from a conversation that's going nowhere. Sometimes it's choosing not to correct every lie or defend every misunderstanding, because you understand that peace isn't found in proving your point. It's found in protecting your balance. And let me be clear, it takes practice. Detachment isn't natural at first, especially if you're used to caring deeply, giving endlessly, or fixing constantly. The more empathy you have, the harder it is to detach. But that's why it's so powerful. You're not numbing yourself. You're learning boundaries. You're learning that you can love people and still not let their chaos live rent free in your head. Think about how many times you've left a conversation frustrated, not because of what was said, but because of how much you let it get to you. That's the emotional hook. People who lack self-awareness throw out emotional bait, hoping you'll bite. Detachment is when you stop biting. It's when you recognize that not every situation needs a reaction, not every disagreement needs resolution, and not every problem is yours to fix. Detachment gives you your emotional power back. You stop being dragged into every argument or feeling responsible for every mood around you. You learn that someone else's anger doesn't require your anxiety, and someone else's silence doesn't mean you did something wrong. You stop trying to read between the lines, and instead you just read what's there, and that's it. When you detach, you start to see clearly. The fog lifts. You can see people for who they are, not for who you're emotionally hoping they'll be. You recognize patterns without the confusion of attachment. You make decisions based on logic, not pressure. And most importantly, you protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. The beauty of detachment is that it gives you emotional breathing room. You can finally feel things without drowning in them. You can experience disappointment without despair. You can care without overextending. And the irony is, the more you detach, the more compassion you actually develop, because you're no longer reacting from pain. You're responding from peace. People might not understand it at first. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant, that you don't care the way you used to. But what they're really saying is, I can no longer manipulate your emotions the way I used to. And that's okay. Growth makes others uncomfortable. But peace isn't supposed to be understood by everyone. It's supposed to be lived by you. So when the world gets loud and people try to pull you into emotional chaos, take a breath. Remind yourself that their feelings are theirs to manage. You don't have to own what doesn't belong to you. Detachment isn't cold. It's clarity. It's the art of protecting your calm in a world that profits off your reaction. When emotions rise, calm feels like the hardest choice to make. You feel that heat in your chest, that urge to defend yourself, to speak louder so they'll finally understand your side. But here's what most people miss. Calm isn't weakness. It's command. It's not about being passive. It's about being powerful enough to stay centered when someone's trying to throw you off balance.